When I got back to the cave, I walked over to the sink and tested the water. It was just as cool as I expected. My stomach growled. I looked in the cupboards and the fridge for something to eat, but nothing seemed appealing to my taste buds. So, I contacted a pizza parlor and ordered a Canadian bacon and pineapple pizza, with a Dad's root beer, for delivery. I had that craving. An hour later, a small transport vehicle flew up to the patio. It looked more like a van. Both sides had sizable decals with the name of the pizza restaurant on its sides. A young man in a blue uniform and a ball cap stepped out and handed me a very large thick crust pizza, exactly as I ordered. He tipped his hat, and said, "Nice cave. Enjoy your pizza." And he was off. I thought the logo on the vehicle and on his back looked like they came right out of the 1950s. I was impressed. I should add. No spoilers here. I don't want to expose insider information regarding the survivors of the coming pizza wars. Let's say they have always been one of my favorite, take and bake, pizza shops. Early evening was remarkable as the light from the setting sun lit the rock walls on both sides. I was spellbound watching the sun crawl along the rocks on the other side of the inlet while eating my pizza. Nighttime was a little scary. The lighting in the cave was sufficient to see my way around. The patio had several lamp posts, which provided ample light, but when you looked over the railing, it was pitch black. It was pitch black with the loud noise of ocean waves crashing against the rocks. One could only wonder what might crawl up the cliffs in the middle of the night, over the railing, and into your bedroom while you're sleeping. I could imagine the ghastly figure reaching up over the railing as I stood there watching, frozen in horror. No one would even hear the loud gut-wrenching screams, the relentless blood-curdling siren through the night. With several hair-raising monsters in mind, I turned the lamps on the patio off and stared up at the night sky. Millions of brilliant stars spread across the black sky, adding their eerie dim light to the darkness. I stood motionless as if I was waiting for the stars to touch me with their warmth, maybe impart their wisdom. God knew all of their names. I didn't know even the name of one small star. Perhaps no human could pronounce them. I would have yelled to one if I weren't afraid it would give me the recipe for pancakes and sing Twinkle Little Star for an hour. It was starting to cool off, and I was getting goosebumps, so I made myself a cup of hot tea, returned to the patio, and sat in a lounge chair so I could stare up at the night. People back on Earth are so consumed by their problems and successes. It seems heaven holds no place for them. If people understood, none would want to miss going to heaven, none. God, please give me wisdom and understanding. I returned home the next day and spent the next week hanging around the yard. I took advantage of the outbuilding at the bottom of the garden. The front of the building was all windows. With the push of a button, the glass went from clear to a dark, almost black, shade. The entrance door was right before the walkway leading through the gardens to the pool. Inside, in the back, right corner, stood a rock waterfall that I could turn on and off with the help of a small wheel. One way turned it on, and the other turned it off. The sound of the falling water, when fully on, encompassed the whole inside of the building. The water circulated through a heat pump and filter, and was constantly warm. The atmosphere was always steamy and humid inside. Hundreds of tropical plants and small trees were distributed all around, which made it an exotic jungle-like climate. I loved to go down there, turn on the recorder for music, and stand under the hot water. It surprised me to find there were still radio stations, particularly ones playing golden oldies. I spent a lot of time in the singing songs like This Magic Moment, Reelin' in the Years, and others. I thought if I should install closets so I can have clothes close by, maybe a bed. Too often, I neglected to dim the windows. Ugh. It wasn't whether someone might see me naked, but might see me dancing around singing while naked, and out of control. Disturbing. Perhaps some neighbor from across the inlet has a very good pair of binoculars, and just out of curiosity, they often looked over my way. I don't even want to think about it. One day, while standing just beyond the outbuilding, I observed of how uniform the rose gardens were. So, I asked the gardener to take them out. Please remove them. They're too uniform for my liking. That same day, the gardener pulled them up and replanted them in various places around the property. He replaced them with several kinds of rhododendrons, other bushes, flowers, and small trees as I instructed. I had him put in grass pathways leading to small stone fountains in the middle of small lounging areas. I think the gardener wasn't too happy with me, especially when I explained to him there was a form of artistic license in planting gardens. Not everything has to be so uniform. He got the message as he aggressively landscaped the whole area in 2 days. When completed, it looked incredible. The next day, I received a message from Casey. Casey and Crystal worked for the builders. Well, Casey invited me to come up to Builder North to spend a few days. The builders are a group of spaceships that look like small moons. They were similar in size to any of those Dyson spheres I saw on transit. Each builder group comprised 6 colossal ships along with an array of support craft which made up living quarters, cafeterias, etc. Their support crafts were the same ones used to house citizens when they first arrived in Sierra. Both he and Crystal were division heads. Casey was the director of the science division. Crystal was the chief of the engineering division. The builders captured planets and set them into proper orbits around promising suns. Casey, as director of the science division, was responsible for sending out scientific expeditions to locate and evaluate potential planets. Those expeditions were for citizens who loved to travel in space, as the missions often required years of space travel. They were true explorers. It was near impossible to select a prospective planet when you're not sure where you're going. So, the explorer crafts spent months on end traveling at warp speed mapping space and searching for potential worlds. When necessary, the explorer ship stopped and gave coordinates so transport vehicles could come and ferry crew members home. Once they discovered a desirable planet, the navigator placed a transport satellite and sent coordinates to set a pattern buffer for travel. Crew members could come and go as needed once the transport satellite was in place. Once a prospective planet met all the initial criteria, Casey's division stepped in and resolved the following issues. Did it comprise the desirable minerals? Did it have the appropriate gravitational strength to maintain an atmosphere and orbit? Are there sufficient land depressions to separate oceans and waterways from dry land? The science division studied all the natural attributes of the planet. Also, they sent survey ships out to map the surface. Those same ships dropped 100 small pyramid-looking sensors all over the selected planet. The sensors created a field over the whole surface and sent information back to Casey's department, measuring different aspects of the planet. Each sensor was 8 feet by 8 feet wide, and 6 feet tall and measured magnetic fields, gravitational fields, density, and other pertinent information necessary to model the planet's ability to be moved, put into orbit, and support life. Those sensors provided enough information to create a 3D model for study. Casey could manipulate that model by applying different options to determine the best way to terraform the planet or reject it. The process might take up to 10 years. If a planet met all the scientific criteria, the builder ships moved into place around it. Each group of builder ships had a contingency of 6 main craft. There were 3 groups of builder ships, only 1 group in service currently. The flagship of this group was called the North, where Casey's and Crystal's offices were. The rest were named South, East, West, Front, and Back. Each ship maneuvered itself into a position corresponding to their name. Once the 6 ships were in place, Crystal went to work. It was her responsibility to make sure each ship worked in sync with the others. Each vessel applied the appropriate gravitational pull on the planet so it could be moved, without breaking it up, and placed in a solar system with a proper star at its center. When placed, the ships moved in a circular direction to initiate the correct rotation. Once the planet was rotating, the ships performed a maneuver, called the poke, to set its proper tilt towards the sun. The aim was to establish a rotation equal to all the other habitable planets in Sierra. Sierra has 136 habitable planets in the system within 5 galaxies. Only 133 are natural. I don't know when, but sometime in the past, God created those planets and made them habitable for human life. The builders provided the other 3. It might take several resets to find a perfect time sequence, but once completed the seasons fell naturally into time and place. At that point, they implemented the terraforming process. My friend Dave, with others like him, came in and helped with the transformation. They supplied many of the natural elements and livestock used in the terraforming process. Both Casey and Crystal shared the responsibility for terraforming. As I was looking at Casey's 3D model, it made me wonder where all the water came from. Several regions in space contain vast amounts of usable water, light years of water just floating, waiting to be used. I asked Casey about the water planet in the Blue Heaven. Is the water planet in the Blue Heaven a source of water? Blue Heaven? I don't know what planet you're talking about. I explained to him the area in space that Jack and I had recently visited and the water planet. Okay. We call that planet Aqua 314. That planet has an abundance of life, So we don't use it? There is too much water elsewhere to risk destroying such an ecosystem. So, you know the planet in the blue heaven? Of course, everyone does, Father. He knew the precise area, with the suns and the large water planet. Jack said he discovered it. I hesitated for a second. Then, I laughed at Jack under my breath, even if he wasn't there. I asked again, are the fish and water mammals living in any of the water regions you use? No, we won't take the water if it contained fish or aquatic mammals, only water comprising the basic biochemicals. Not only does the process endanger the fish and other mammals, but removing them impedes the process of gathering the water. We add the fish and aquatic mammals at a later time. Overall, it might be a 50 to 100 year project to make a planet habitable. So, it makes sense they have completed only 3 so far. Once terraformed, they monitored the planet for at least 40 years in case adjustments became necessary. Hopefully, the planet naturally settles into a viable, natural habitat within that time frame. When I got the chance to visit with Crystal, she was engrossed in a vital spot of sinking the gravitational pull between the ships and the planet they were working with. I could sense the strain on the ship, and Crystal, as it pulled on the planet. It popped my ears twice. It surprised me by how much time passed to set one of these planets into order. I knew God did it in less than a day, and I suppose other immortals might do it much faster than we do here in Sierra. But that was beside the point. Even after the first dreams I had of Sierra, I didn't want all our necessities to be immediately provided. The journey was important. It didn't matter if it took 100 years or a week to complete anything. As long as there was progress, and events were moving along, and the people of Sierra worked together. Sierrians felt the same way as I did about the journey. Both my kids understood this. Their positions with the builders were menial tasks to them. Each should have been living other lives considered more satisfying to other immortals, but they enjoyed and valued what they were doing. Perhaps, at some point, both might do something else. Truthfully, in Sierra, no one needs to work. We used a term to illustrate why everyone does what they do. The term was occupy. We occupied our days, our families, our free time, as it seemed so natural to be busy occupying. Once Sierra was established, Sierrians settled into millions of ordinary daily routines. Maybe after the millennium, it will be different. Who knows? There are other pertinent reasons for Sierra and the other similar regions out in space. One day, there will be another war on Earth. That will be the war to end all wars. It will bring the millennium to a conclusion. Because mortal men will come to hate Christ, just like they do in the world now. They will turn on him again. Because of rebellion, they will hate his rule and despise anything associated with Jerusalem. Nations will march against Jerusalem to destroy it. Evil mortal leaders, with their mortal armies, will fail. God will crush them. In the end, he will destroy heaven and the earth. Afterward, he will create a new earth with a new heaven, which was why I and many like me trust in Christ now. We trust him, because one day, he will do away with everything evil. The millennium was only the first step to an eternity of peace and joy. During the millennium, mortals will have to make a choice. After the wonderful reign of Christ, they will have learned what life should be like. Sadly, many will still decide to reject him. Fortunately for immortals, the redeemed, the decision has been made. All the immortals accepted Christ before the end of the tribulation. Eventually, death will no longer have its ugly hold on mankind. At that time, the restraints which confined men to the earth will, out of necessity due to a flourishing population, be terminated. Then men will push out into the far horizons of space. Sierra will be disclosed to the world. Many will come. Many will follow. Those already living here will be the guides, the leaders to help pioneers acclimate and find their place in the stars. Yet, the earth, Jerusalem, will continue to be the central seat of government throughout the universe, eternally. Gratefully, there was still 794 years of the millennium left. So, when I wasn't figuring out the universal timeline or adjusting my jaw, I spoke with Crystal, how she liked her work, and how the boys were doing. Her boys were back on Earth, running the state of Texas. One or both come to visit her at least once a month. I suggested, you should bring them by next time they come to Sierra. She gave me the strangest look. Dad, they come over all the time, but I'll bring them next time they visit. That was an awkward 15 minutes, full of 15 different apologies. The 3 of us spent the evening on a barrack ship. It was like a resort. Mostly, you couldn't tell you were on a spacecraft. The upper portion, or dome, made for a faultless natural sky. Pools, lawns, gardens, and trails were new to the stations, since the early days when they housed the families. I liked the new trails. We walked around and stopped at an Italian restaurant for dinner. I had meatballs and pasta. Casey still loved pizza. I mentioned I had pizza the other night. Crystal had the Italian platter with several small entrees. We talked into the night. I always love spending time with my kids. I met the captain and the bridge crew the following day. Once on the bridge, I immediately walked over and stood in front of the viewing window at the front of the bridge, which was impressive. I surprised the captain with my humility, who didn't expect such from the person who, essentially, ran Sierra. Little did he know. Perhaps he might kick me or insult me if I told him I was a mortal at the moment, although I had no intention of saying anything as I didn't want to risk it. After 2 days, I let them both get back to work and returned home. I cherished the trip, and the time I got to spend with them both. It's funny how everything is so new to me. I'm sure I saw my kids all the time as the other Jeff. Only, now, and other than vague memories that pop into my head, it all seems new. I recalled my dream with the mansion and how I wanted to stay. I found myself wishing I could return to that place, forever.